Digital divide and online activism continue to shape Kenya's political landscape. Connected but vulnerable, the hidden dangers of public Wi-Fi. Sudan burns, the region feels it. War, displacement, and East Africa's response. DRC humanitarian crises at stake as peace efforts struggle to take hold. Hello, we are live from Globoscope. I am your host Marian Dichu, and I'd like to welcome our viewers from Kenya and around the world. We are with you for the next 25 minutes and thank you for joining us. This is The Feed Lens. You can follow us on Instagram at The Feed Lens and use the hashtag The Feed Lens to follow our stories on X. On our top story today, digital polarization is changing how Kenya conducts its politics. Social media platforms have become battlefields of ideas, influence, and sometimes misinformation. With over 13 million active social media users in Kenya and more than 4.5 million on X, better known as Twitter, the online space has become both a platform for civic engagement, political opinions, bias, and divisions. From trending hashtags such as the Drain the Swamp that shape national debates to polarized campaigns, the question remains, has social media become a tool for democracy or division? Let's take a closer look at how digital polarization is reshaping political conversations and identity in Kenya. Philip Sinyembo with more.
Kenya's political landscape is evolving every day, with social media becoming a central tool for the drive through hashtags, memes, and silhouettes. Although online activism is reshaping political conversations and engagement, it also risks dividing Kenyans along tribal and ideological lines.
Social media is actually helping us because we are able to call them out on what they are doing, and we can also motivate other Gen Zs like us who can be able also, who are also in the political space, to also help us to correct our political leaders and call them out on what they are doing wrong.
Narratives on social media, they might be there, but they aren't as successful as the pushers of such narratives would want them to be, because there's a new generation in politics that are not into tribal talks. So it's very tricky to operate on tribal lines in social media, because people just see and let it go, because it doesn't affect them in any way. It doesn't add up to what their mindsets are about tribes.
Media and space, cyberspace, is a part of the social change. A social change affects all the sphere of human existence and human life. And politics is one of a segment of a social change that also comes with the change that is there. You will note how people used to do politics in 1990. It's not how politics are being done now. You need online brigadier to be able to campaign for you. So the social media has affected politics. You know, politics or is how people are governed. People are governed because they have given a mandate to an individual.
We are now joined by Philip Sinyembo, who has been following the story and will help us break this down. What more can you tell us, Philip?
Thank you, Marion. After speaking to many online users, particularly the youth, the common insights I got is that many feel empowered by social media to air out their political stance, frustration, and opinions, though experts warn that digital echo chambers are breeding hostility, such as online tribal debates and spreading of fake news.
This is a very concerning issue. How is the matter affecting Kenya's democracy?
Well, Marion, one major factor is that the matter is complicated. Social media has taken a notch higher on the already existing democracy, but also created a gap for misinformation, biasness, and rage-bait political tribal content. Also, amid the new amended cyber law bill, this poses a threat to this freedom of expression on social media platforms, as the law in itself has ambiguous wording that may be used for self-interest.
And finally, before we wrap up the discussion, how has digital polarization influenced political participation and social unity in other countries such as Nepal, Madagascar, and India? What lessons can Kenya draw from these examples as it navigates its own digital future?
Question, Marion. Looking at Nepal, a 2023 study by the Center for Social Inclusion and Federalism reported that social media was used to spread politically motivated misinformation during local elections, worsening ethnic polarization and voter manipulation. While in Madagascar, according to BBC monitoring, fake news pages flooded online space ahead of the presidential campaigns, sparking protests and undermining public trust in the media. And finally, in India, the Oxford Institute listed the country among top 3 globally for organized social media manipulation in particular. During elections, where political parties used bots and coordinated posts to influence voter perception, these examples show that digital polarization is not just a Kenyan issue, but a global trend that challenges democratic processes. The key lesson for Kenya is the need for strong digital literacy, independent fact-checking institutions, and transparency to curb the misuse of social media while protecting the freedom of expression. Back to you, Stu.
Thank you, Feli, for the in-depth report. The digital polarization crisis isn't just a threat to online discourse, but a challenge for Kenya's democracy and unity. We are now joined by Prince Seni, who will discuss how digital polarization is shaping the features of Kenya's political landscape. In your experience, is digital polarization crafting a new path to seek accountability through memes and silhouettes, or is it deepening political divide and tribalism in Kenya through rage-bait content?
Thank you for having me. Now, to answer your question, I would like to go back first in time to 40-50 years ago. In this country 40 to 50 years ago, we didn't even have multi-party. We only had one party. It was a single party state. Number 2, we didn't even have multiple sources of media, news to rely on. It was just one, right? From my memory, I think it was KBC, right, which is still there today. The nationally owned, government-owned source of media, source of news. Not only that, people were afraid 40 to 50 years ago of speaking up their mind, saying whatever they wanted in terms of, like, maybe the government wants to build a school, but the public wants to prioritize a hospital instead. You know, they couldn't say such things that are going against what the government claims that they should do, right? And as a result, they would get either jail time or they would be abducted and never seen again. 40 to 50 years ago, we had a government that was only filled with old people that are not even close to representative in what the majority of the country is, right? Not only were there old people, they were elite. They weren't even the common person on the street. They were people who were rich in their own right, and they wanted to use power to strengthen themselves. But fast forward to today, we have, through many ways, especially digital polarization, we have not only people who are in the government that represents the majority, right? There are also people who are voicing their opinions and they are not jailed for it. We have people who are basically, we have multiple sources of news, and we have people, especially young people, who are in these sources of news interviewing, just like this interview right now. They're being interviewed almost every night about their thoughts and opinions. They're on gazettes, they're on articles, radio stations. We even have the government, the head of state himself, actively asking the youth representatives to join him in implementing what is best for the country. And this is because, especially last year's digital polarization, the memes and silhouettes that you just mentioned, it's because of these actions, the youth speaking their mind, right, that has brought change and implemented more representation, especially among young people in this country, and that is a net positive, in my opinion, compared to the past. Of course, it's not perfect. We still have people who are abducted for, according to local reports, recent reports, for speaking up their minds, speaking their opinions. We still have people who are even tribal, right? Recently, the country lost one of the key political figures, Raila Odinga, and there are people who are still saying things like, he wasn't one of us, he wasn't from my tribe. I don't care, doesn't affect me. You know, we still have that, and digital polarization has not made that easier in terms of those, the minority. They have only emboldened them to be more tribal. But as at a net outlook, I still feel like digital polarization has done more good to this country than bad. And in the future, look at the IEBC, which is the electoral body in this country. We still have the IEBC seeking the youth to register as voters and not only voice their opinions through the digital polarization, but also vote their likely leaders that will implement their ideas and opinions. So the future does look bright in my opinion, and it's all because of digital polarization.
Lastly, how effective will the new amended Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act framework be used in tackling political misinformation, and what safeguarding measures are needed to ensure it does not interfere with the freedom of expression, satire, and seeking accountability as legitimate criticism?
Well, that's an excellent question, by the way. But this Cybercrimes Act, Computer Misuse and Cybercrimes Act of 2024, that was amended weeks ago, on the morning of, it was signed into law the morning of Raila Odinga's passing. It, in my opinion, of course, has two parts to it. It has been met, first of all, with so much controversy, and I'll explain why in just a bit. But on one hand, we have a part of the bill now that has now become law that says websites and applications that basically promote terrorism and child porn will be limited. The government now has the ability to limit them and even inhibit them, prevent their use due to such content, and I agree with it. It shouldn't be promoted. That's one hand. On the other hand, the amendment also talks about anyone who communicates with someone who is likely to be violent or burn property will be facing up to 10 years in jail, prison, or pay a fine of up to 20 million Kenyan shillings. Now that is very problematic in my opinion, and I'll explain why. Because of two things. Number one, they use the word likely. See, you don't even have to be someone who is violent. You don't even have to be someone who has burnt property. You just have to be someone who is likely, or is seen as likely. That's the key word. Seen as likely to do these things. And the government or the law, whoever implements this, will imprison you for up to 10 years or force you to pay a 20 million Kenya shilling fine, or both. That's what the amendment says. Now that is problematic because opinions exist. I can easily say, you, dear viewer or dear listener, are likely to commit a crime. Am I right? No, because I don't even know what your plans are. But because I have my own way of thinking and see things in my own point of view, everybody does, right? I can use that to fine you or jail you, and I feel like that's not right. Laws in this country are based on actions and not opinions. People are arrested for murder after murdering. People are arrested for stealing after stealing. You shouldn't be arrested because you're likely to do something, because what if somebody is wrong? So I feel like that is controversial and problematic. Number two, it uses the word communicate. If you communicate with someone who is likely to do something, you will get 20 million Kenyan shillings fine or 10 years in jail, up to, or both. Now, there's freedom of speech in this country. Although it's not absolute. For example, if you insult someone, you are liable to pay that person in damages for defamation. That is part of the law, and we agree on that one. That is fair. However, communicating with someone who is likely to do something, not even done it, should not be something that you should be jailed for. That is inhibiting, in my opinion, the rights that citizens have in this country of free speech, or to free speech. You can communicate to whoever you want, right? And now that the law allows people to be jailed for that or fined for that. No. But there's a bright side. The courts weeks ago have stopped the bill from being implemented, of course temporarily, and that's, to answer the second part of the question, that's one of the ways or measures that can be taken to inhibit the freedom of speech from being deteriorated or messed with. However, I feel like that since that's only a temporary measure, it's good that the courts are independent, but it's only a temporary measure. The permanent measure should be the law or the amendment to be taken back to the National Assembly and Parliament. They should remove the parts that inhibits the freedom of speech of Kenyans and just keep the parts that literally break the law, which is the promotion of child porn and terrorism. That's the only way, in my opinion, that I feel like this will be permanently put to rest and freedom of speech will be maintained. Today, tomorrow, forever and ever, as long as Kenya remains Kenya.
Thanks for your insight. Digital polarization remains a pressing issue that demands action from government, tech platforms, and citizens alike. Promoting digital literacy and safeguarding free expression will be key to building a more informed and united Kenya. Next, we turn our focus to public Wi-Fi, a service many Kenyans rely on daily in cafes, matatus, universities, and public offices. But behind the convenience lies a growing cybersecurity risk. Cybercriminals are creating fake hotspots, intercepting data, and stealing logins from unsuspecting users. We take a closer look at how public networks are becoming targets for digital fraud. Ernest Jenga with more.
According to the Communications Authority of Kenya, cybercrime losses linked to unsecured internet connections now account for a significant share of reported digital fraud cases. With public Wi-Fi frequently identified as the initial access point, security audits now show that many free networks do not use WPA2 or WPA3 encryption, leaving user data exposed to packet sniffing and session hijacking attacks. In its National KESAT report of 2024, the authority further notes that attacks often require only basic software to monitor traffic on open networks, making public Wi-Fi a low-cost, high-reward target. Once data is captured, stolen credentials are commonly sold or reused in mobile money fraud, identity theft, and account takeovers, with victims often unaware until financial losses occur.
I actually don't like using public Wi-Fi, one, because I'm usually scared that someone might hack my phone or send a virus like an SMS or a link. And if I use a public Wi-Fi, I ensure they actually have passwords. Like I know kuna matatu zinakuanga na passwords, so that's what I use because those passwords are not given easily.
Public Wi-Fi networks have become a daily access point for millions of Kenyans. But according to the Communications Authority of Kenya, most public hotspots in Nairobi, Mombasa, and Kisumu lack basic encryption, allowing hackers to intercept data with ease. A recent cybersecurity report by Seriano shows that the Evo Twin hotspots have increased by 34%, where attackers duplicate legitimate network names to steal passwords, email logins, and even mobile money credentials. Young people, students, and remote workers are the most targeted. As public Wi-Fi use continues to grow across Kenya, cybersecurity experts warn that the many users are unaware of the risks they face each time they connect. From fake hotspots to data interception, public networks have become targets for cybercriminals. The challenge now is whether awareness, digital hygiene, and stronger safety measures can keep pace with the evolving threats. Ernest Njenga reporting for the Feedlens.
We are now joined by Ian Gaitho, who will break down how public Wi-Fi networks are threatening digital safety in Kenya. Are public Wi-Fi networks now among the most common targets used by cybercriminals to steal personal data in Kenya?
Yes, with the emergence of 5G internet and more access to the internet, many people are finding themselves having to log in to unsecure networks that in turn have them siphoning their data from their devices, were without their knowledge. So the threat landscape has just increased exponentially over the few years.
How do Evo Twin Hotspot and open networks allow hackers to intercept logins, emails, and M-Pesa details?
By duplicating the Wi-Fi names and luring in potential victims by offering maybe quote-unquote a name like free cafe Wi-Fi instead of free cafe underscore Wi-Fi. So you find people logging into the Wi-Fi's unknowingly that it's not secure, minding about their businesses, doing logins, transactions, while on the other side, the hacker is slowly but surely collecting your data.
What practical steps can Kenyans take to be safe when using public Wi-Fi's in cafes, matatus, and public offices?
So, potential Kenyans can use various ways to keep themselves safe from attacks and threats in the internet. One, encryption of all data, whereby all your data, no matter if it's messages, texts, passwords, it's all encrypted, so not allowing anyone to see your data. Secondly is use of zero trust updates. So don't trust any networks while operating on unsecure Wi-Fi networks, which in turn will help you stay safe. Secondly, if you're using a corporate system, you can have what we call this, mostly a managing dashboard. Fortinet is very experienced in FortiGate systems, whereby you are able to see who is on the network, what they're doing, and in turn this will help you keep yourself safe from threats and attacks from hackers.
Thank you, Ian, for your insights. As public Wi-Fi use continues to grow, digital safety remains a serious concern for millions of Kenya. Protecting personal data is no longer a choice, it's a necessity. Ahead, a war without borders. Sudan's conflict drives millions into East Africa, stretching humanitarian and security systems to the limit. Welcome back now. We focus on Sudan, where the civil war between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army has escalated into one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. According to UNHCR 2024, over 1.6 million Sudanese have fled to East Africa, including South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda, while another 3.9 remain internally displaced. As El Fasher and Janina face critical mass brutality, the Food and Agricultural Organization reports that nearly 18 million people are food insecure, with 7 million facing emergency levels. Despite regional efforts by IGAD and the African Union, mediation remains fragmented. Sidi Omari reports.
Humanitarian agencies warn that access constraints and insecurity inside Sudan have severely limited aid delivery, leaving millions without food, medical care, or shelter. According to the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, more than half of Sudan's population now requires humanitarian assistance, while cross-border aid operations into Darfur and Khartoum remain disrupted by fighting. As displacement deepens, host communities across East Africa face increasing pressure on health services, water supplies, and security infrastructure.
As Sudan's civil war between the Rapid Support Forces and the Sudanese army continues, the humanitarian situation is rapidly deteriorating and spilling into East Africa. With over 1.6 million refugees fleeing into neighboring countries and millions more facing severe food insecurity, host states are undergoing strain. Despite mediation efforts by IGAD and the African Union, diplomatic initiatives remain fragmented and have failed to halt the violence or protect the civilians. The challenge now is whether regional actors can mount a coordinated response to contain the crisis and prevent further humanitarian collapse. Sidi Omari reporting for the Feed Lens.
We are now joined by a regional analyst to discuss the impact of Sudan's war on East Africa. What long-term security risks does the conflict pose to border states like South Sudan, Ethiopia, and Uganda?
In my own opinion, as an individual, as a scholar, I do not believe in blaming the victim. So people have done a lot of research saying, refugees and insecurity in the host country and the rest, that's blaming the victim. Maybe there are people who take advantage of that situation. A refugee is a person running away, so there are those who take advantage of that situation and maybe perpetuate insecurity.
Lastly, what structural reforms are needed to make regional interventions more enforceable?
We need dialogue, all of them, and it should go beyond the two military groups. It should involve the civil society, civilians, with a view of returning the country to civilian rule.
Thank you for your insights. As Sudan's war drive mass displacement, stronger regional coordination and enforceable mechanisms are urgent to address humanitarian pressures and security risks. As we conclude, we shift focus to the ongoing humanitarian crisis in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where over 7.2 million people have been displaced due to conflict, according to the UNHCR 2024 report. While Kenya continues to play a crucial role in regional mediation, many ask on whether these efforts are translating into lasting peace. With the humanitarian situation worsening and access to aid is limited, the region faces a critical test of diplomacy, security, and humanity. Mina Isaac has more on the story.
The ongoing war in DRC has forced millions to flee their homes seeking safety, shelter, and food. The UN organization estimates that over 26 million people are in need of humanitarian assistance across the country, and Kenya has been at the forefront of the Nairobi Peace Process, a regional initiative launched in 2022 under the East African Community to bring together the DRC government and more than 50 armed groups for dialogue and demobilization. However, the process has faced several setbacks, including delays in funding, security breaches, and limited coordination between military and diplomatic tracks. Regional analysts warn that without sustainable political will and humanitarian support, lasting peace in Democratic Republic of Congo will remain in shambles, as the situation has triggered one of Africa's most severe humanitarian emergencies, with communities facing malnutrition, gender-based violence, and limited access to healthcare. Reporting for the Feed Lens, I am Mina Isaac.
I don't think so. I haven't seen any real progress in the talks they've had in Nairobi. The president of the East African Community have really tried to resolve the issue by sending military aids, signing treaties between the two conflicting countries. But on the ground, I haven't seen any change or any progress that have been made. The locals have been complaining about the Kenyan army actually joining the rebels in the massacre that's ongoing. So I don't think there's been any change that has occurred.
We are now joined by Simon Pistache, who will discuss regional responses to the conflicts and the challenges facing DRC. What role should Kenya and the Eastern African Community play in stabilizing the DRC war and ensuring humanitarian access?
Well, the involvement of Kenya in the peace building in DRC, it was not bearing fruit.
I remember, of course, in DRC we saw Kenyan government through the army, Kenyan army in DRC, trying to make peace, but unfortunately, it wasn't successfully succeed. And the fact is, according to the population of that area, those guys came just to, for resources, not for making a peace. Of course, when the population realized that, they were killing even Kenyan army. Of course, you can testify, you've heard about that. Kenyan army died a lot in DRC. So they saw the resources, then they invade that resources instead of making peace. No, they had their own objective. That's why the peace failed, and the Kenya government decided to bring back the army.
How can regional collaboration improve humanitarian coordination and accountability for human rights violation?
So I can say they can withdraw themselves in that matter. Actually, all of us, we know, for instance, the example of Burkina Faso, with this president, actual president, military president, he decided to stay alone, to make a peace as a local leader with his people. That was the same, I think, the same strategy Congolese can take, to avoid all those parties, stakeholders within peace, or with peace stakeholders to intervene DRC matters. It's each of two countries to stay together, to take decisions. So today people have lost their life a lot. Now we decide to make, without bring a mediator between them. Okay, to respect the country's boundary borders. Yeah.
Thank you for your insight, Simon. The humanitarian crisis in DRC is a key reminder that peace requires not just diplomacy, but dedication to humanity and justice. As key figures continue to play a role in peacekeeping and conflict resolution, the question that remains is, are the efforts truly making a lasting impact, or is more needed to ensure stability and sustainable peace? From digital polarization to dangers of public Wi-Fi, impact of Sudan's war on Eastern African nations, and DRC's humanitarian crisis, these stories reflect the interconnected nature of our world and the urgency of collective action. As always, the Feedlands continue to tell stories that inform, inspire, and hold power to account. And I'd like to leave you with a quote by the late Thomas Sankara. You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. That's it for today's edition of Globoscope. Remember to stay informed and engaged. Thank you for watching. Till next time, I'm Marindichu.